Okay, thank you, Robert. Well, hello and welcome to our HPAC town hall today. And our town halls are built around a little different format than our usual sessions because they're intended to be a more open-ended, informal discussion and encourage members to raise topics for discussion. So I would encourage everyone to consider what topics they would like to bring up for discussion today, or topics we could schedule more in-depth discussions in future meetings. And we'll get back to you on that later in the program. But first, I would like to welcome Soumitra Das, who many of you know, the CEO of our affiliate organization in India, which is the Healthy Climate Initiative. And on August the 4th, I had the great pleasure of joining Soumitra and a number of other HPAC members in Delhi to participate in a very significant event, the first India Cooling Summit. Brian von Herten, Paul Singh, and I were all members of the organizing committee of this summit, which had the objective of raising the issue of accelerating global heating to the top levels of the Indian government and scientific establishment, NGO communities, and academic communities. Now, after all, India has been reeling from massive heat waves during the last 2 years that have sorely affected the health of hundreds of millions of people. Along with absolutely devastating floods that have occurred both this year and last year along the Indo-Gangetic floodplain. So, needless to say, India is one country where global heating has been increasingly recognized as a major political challenge. However, direct cooling solutions with sunlight reflection methods are still quite little known and understood on the subcontinent. So let me turn over to Soumitra to share some of his reflections on the summit and the current follow-up actions that he and the team have been working on as we look at this very interesting topic. Soumitra, over to you. There you are.
Yeah. Good morning, good evening. I don't know which parts of the world you were. I am at 3 o'clock in the morning. So, so thank you, Dennis, for the warm introduction. So, why we did this cooling climate, what it was. I have been touring around the country for the last 2 years and speaking with different scientists, different universities. Our target was to cover about 10 to 12 academic institutions and hold workshops in the country, in different parts of the country. So that was our target. And while doing so, realized that Indian scientists and academia are not engaged in something very important areas of climate change. They are aware of, they are working very well on the mitigation, adaptation, and to some extent, carbon removal that is taking off these days. But there is a huge gap in managing what I call, or what we call, managing near-term risks of climate change. So that part is there is a serious gap. And the way the extreme heat is happening and the follow-on climate disasters, we thought that it would be important to engage in a national conversation on such topics. So this was the main idea, and then see what happens out of it. That was the idea. We did not know a priori that cannot assume that the people know, but about this, what MCB and what ACI or what other things are. And also, we are not sure that people really know that we are, when I say people, I mean the establishment in Delhi and the academic establishment, the think tanks, the government officials related to working on climate change, really know that we are moving towards 2 to 3 degrees Celsius in the near future. I mean, it could be 2050, 2060, whatever the time and whatever methods, the 20 years average or, the 1 year off, whether they know it or not, I have no idea. And what it means. So what we did is that we broke it down into 2 parts of conference. The first part is that setting what it means to India in 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. So we had 4 sessions. The first session, one session is about monsoon and agriculture. Second part was that this extreme heat, what it means to Himalayan glaciers, and the water crisis. The another part was national conflict or geopolitics with it because of the migration and the low productivity, the agricultural issues that would follow in this environment. So we got really lucky to have actually few lieutenant general or vice marshal in this panel. And then we had another topic on heat and health. So those are the 4, and the objective was to establish what it means if the world moves toward 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. And the second part, we offered some solution, and then 3 solutions in particular. One was local albedo enhancement to cool locally, and that includes the glacier protection as well, because we have a project to slow down glacial melting using local albedo enhancement techniques. Then it's a maturity scale we are trying to do, and then marine cloud brightening, another part, which was led by Brian von Herzen, and the third was SAI. Those 3 working groups, and SAI was led by Janos Pastor. So these are the 3 solution offerings of 3 panels that was offered. And in between, there are 6 round table dialogues, that 1 hour round table dialogues, and different things, financing and how climate policy 2.0, international climate diplomacy that Dennis was chairing. So this was the summit. I would say that we were very successful in our expectation in terms of the quality of people that we got as speakers, as well as the participants. So that's number 1. We wanted to see that we have very high quality people, because it was only 100 people, invitation only, summit. So that is one thing. Second part was that we wanted to have a shared understanding that climate change is a serious problem for India, and there are solutions beyond mitigation, adaptation, and carbon removal. And in particular, that we should focus a part of our effort in the research for SRN. And I have to say, there was no objection to this idea that we need to focus on SRM research and field experiment. There was no. And almost all speakers talked about the necessity of doing that. So this is I think, two major outcomes, I would say. Now, I wrote a formal document and shared with you a few hours ago about what are the recommendations that came out from the summit. And I can share that very quickly. I don't want to go in verbatim all of these recommendations and details, but I can show you very quickly. So the first part of the central recommendation is something called Climate Policy 2.0. And that integration climate cooling and near-term risk reduction into national climate strategy. That was our objective, and that is what we want to follow through. Allocates resources for research and implementation and builds India's independent scientific and institutional capacity to evaluate sunlight reflection methods. So that is a central recommendation. And if I go to recommendation 1, and I already shared that. So this is Climate Policy 2.0 and what it should do. Basically, we should focus on climate removal, mitigation, adaptation, but also research on cooling, Himalayan glacier protection, marine cloud brightening, and SAI. So that is the gist of recommendation 1. Recommendation number 2, make climate cooling research a strategic national priority. And then you get all the text behind it. Recommendation 3, match research and action to technology maturity. Now, we focused on portfolio approach. When we talked about SRM, we did not mean only SAR. We focused on local albedo enhancement. And the recommendation is that localized cooling is ready. We should scale now. Glacier protection, we should monitor, research, and field trials. Marine cloud brightening, accelerate research and controlled evolution. And SAI, build knowledge and prepare this now. One thing is very important for India is the Indian monsoon. So Indian protection of Indian monsoon must be a central criteria in evaluating MCB, SAI, or any other large-scale climate intervention. And that is no surprise for India and South Asia. This is very India-specific, strengthen heat health, preparedness, and local implementation. This has to happen the way the extreme heat is rising. In Delhi, 49 degrees Celsius, and we anticipate it's going to be 50 degrees Celsius. Whole North India were 45 degrees Celsius for sustained few days. When 80 to 90% homes do not have air conditioning, it's a serious situation. We mentioned that build India's independent capacity in SRM science and decision making. And this is important, and we already have started working on it. establish a coalition and working groups to carry the summit forward. And I'll say a few words after that. And this came from the International Climate Diplomacy, and that was chaired by our Dennis Garrity, that positioned India as a global leader for climate vulnerable countries. So that's all I have, and I can talk about next steps. That what we are planning to do. But before I do you have any questions? I have been blabbering for a few minutes. So if you have any questions.
Let's see, anyone have their hands raised on queries to Soumitra? I don't see any hands up at the moment. Oh, here's Sev. Sev, take it away.
Yep. Soumitra, what is the likelihood of a nationwide famine in India next year? And how are your diesel reserves and capacities able to even harvest the crop if you get one?
That's a very difficult, question or easy question. 1877, we had the worst El Nino, and we had 4 to 5% population, perished during that famine. In India, it would be very difficult this year as well. But, the famine situation that happened, unfortunately, it was not just because of that El Nino situation. It was also the policy response to it. And if you recall, this was under the British colonial rule that time, and they had the policy of not helping the people that time in India. India never had famine before the British colonial rule. And after British colonial rule, there are several famines that happened. And it was a policy response also. So to respond to your question is that it will be a very difficult situation because of the super El Nino. But at the same time, famine situation, do not know. How it all depends on how government of India will respond to the situation. And I have no idea at this point.
Well, I might mention, Soumitra, that the Indian government now has a very effective grain reserve system. And so I'm sure that the buffer stocks will be extremely important. India is now an exporter of food grains, rice, wheat, etc. And India does have the general behavior of shutting down exports when there is a food deficit. So it has a number of levers to address the short-term issues. But no doubt, if the El Nino does what many predict it will do, we may have a partial failure of the monsoon next year, as well as devastating floods. And the government will be under great duress to handle this problem, as in many other countries. Mike has his hand up there. Mike?
So, Soumitra, what we hear in the U.S. about disastrous conditions are things about earthquakes. And earthquakes, a few hundred people die, and then there's international responses and all sorts of things. And yet in India, didn't they just have a rather large case of heat wave deaths and stuff? And the word doesn't seem to get out about some of these things and create an international response and concern and awareness of it. And I guess I'm wondering if one of the things to be doing as a leading climate vulnerable country in that effort is making sure that there is awareness of the seriousness of the situation that is occurring, so you can press other countries to realize there's got to be responses.
So heat deaths, and it's a very sensitive, touchy issue in India. There are a lot of I would not say there is no effort from the government. There are lots of efforts and a lot of heat action plans. Some state has done very well. Some state has not done not that well, implementation-wise. But the plans on the book are there. And I was very pleasantly surprised to see those plans. Are those adequate plans? Probably not. Probably not. It's not. And that's why we had that heat and health panel, just because of that. We know that. The second question is that heat death, why it doesn't come out? Because India doesn't count those numbers. You will never find in India, if you go, somebody dies during the heat wave, doctor doesn't know whether it is because of heat or diabetes or some old age. So there's a heart failure. Well, it could be the heart failure, could be because of this person were exposed to extreme heat, could not sleep for several days. But that's not the certificate that they write, because they are not trained to identify that. So when you see that not only 40 people died, it's not 40 people, it's probably 100,000 people died. I'm just throwing the number, but no, so there has been research, and I have been looking into this research, and the estimate is that about 30,000 people extra or excess deaths during a heat wave. So if you have 5 heat waves, so one heat wave can cause death of 30,000 excess death per year. And on average, you get 4 to 5. That means about 150,000 people die every year. That estimate is out there. Several corroborations on that. I have brought this issue up in several Indian Institute of Technologies. But no, I think general recognition is not there at this time.
Yeah. Let's have Greg Slater, and then we'll go back to Soumitra to sum up with the next the future actions. Greg?
Could I just mention, Dennis,
Yeah.
Chris, Glenn Weinreb, and John Dixon all had their hands up before Greg.
Oh, they did. I did see.
I was going to say, but yeah.
Okay.
So put me at the end of the line.
Oh, okay. So I guess Glenn was first with his hand up, then Robert, and then John. Okay.
Yeah. So the it's interesting if you look at President Biden, who had the power of the presidency. He had hundreds of billions of dollars to spend over 4 years, and also we can look at what did he do to change the average global temperature, and it's hard for me to see anything that he did. And so then the question is, okay, if you've got some money and you want to solve the entire problem, and let's say you're not focusing on policy, but you're focusing on research and development, which you're suggesting be focused on, there's the question, is it possible to solve the entire problem with a surge in R&D? And if so, what are you doing? What kind of R&D? And how much does that cost? And does it cost $1 billion, $10 billion, $100 billion? And you have different people will have different ideas about this. And also, there's the question, well, where's their documentation that describes this? So if you have a document with suggestions, and you think about President Biden's got all these people working for him, and they didn't have much impact, and Al Gore spent a lot of time talking about climate change. He had a tremendous audience. But there's the question, well, exactly what do you want people to do? And so something to think about is proposals that are you can think of it as the proposals needed to solve the entire climate problem, in theory, can be placed at a website. And also another possibility is they're available open source, which means if somebody doesn't like what they see, they can edit. And if you've got, let's say, somebody responsible for, let's say, SAI experimentation, in theory, they could be asked, given any amount of money, what type of R&D do we need to do? And the same thing with marine cloud brightening, any other topic. And so, and I know you do have some people working on proposals, and I don't know, what you've generated, but oftentimes individuals think about proposals for themselves or one group, as opposed to the proposals needed to solve the entire problem. They may say, well, that's not my job. But in theory, scientists can be asked the question, what does a proposal look like? And that, let's say, goes way beyond their interest. And so the question for Dr. Das is he interested in putting together a team to work on proposals that solve the entire problem? Or if that's too, let's say, overwhelming, put together a team that at least has 1 or 2 or 3 Zoom meetings to talk about that.
So, Glenn, let me talk about that in my next stage, because I'll address how we are planning to do. But it will be, a step-by-step process. So creating awareness first. So that's what we do. Bring it together. You have to bring these people, go along with you. So we do not aspire to solve the problem right away, but to bring along the national leaders, because the policy has to be, accepted by the people. And so I'll come back to your question how you want.
John, please mute your microphone, John.
She came out completely.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Soumitra. We'll get back to that then. Let's move on to Robert, and then John, and then Greg.
Soumitra, that was a very interesting talk. I picked up on one particular line that you referred to, which was that you'd not seen any evidence of opposition to SRM, which is an interesting choice of words, because of course not seeing any opposition. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes,
can you hear me?
Hear you.
Yep.
We can.
Sorry, that not hearing any or seeing any opposition to SRM could mean that the opposition was suppressed. It could mean that there wasn't any opposition, but there wasn't any interest either. So I'm just interested if you could expand a little bit more on what there was no opposition actually meant on the ground.
That's the thing. Yes. The reason I said that, so here is the way we try to give. There are 4 sessions at the beginning, panels. Before that, we have tons of plenary speakers, and from they are all, well-known climate activists, or they have been kind of stalwarts of climate change from last 30, 40 years, many of them. All of the speakers spoke about the necessity of this SRM research. So that's number 1, I have to say. And these are people who participated in COP, chaired COP, became the Indian representative in the COP. These are the people I'm talking about from Indian government. They were the representative at the UN. So this group of people, they did not voice any opposition. Rather, they spoke. They are the plenary speaker in favor of that. Second group, I would say that different institutions that we chose, we did not have our own people doing the panel, but we said, okay, Delhi IIT, Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, you manage this session. ICIMOD, which manages the Himalayan glacier, and it's a non or intergovernmental organization of 7 countries surrounding Himalayas. So you manage the Himalayan section, so on and so forth. So none of the panelists were opposing, rather supporting the need for SRM. Okay. Now that reaches about your 40% of the people, because we have about 45 speakers around that level. And now you get the rest 55 people. Now, I do not know exactly what their choice, and also, but here are certain things to think about. We had Climate Reality Project, which is Al Gore's organization, was actively engaged in the preparation and supporting our issue. So think about this way: the Al Gore, what you see in the US as that, or Al Gore's organization was against this SRM, but in India, the same organization, Indian branch, they are supporting that. So we won there. Then we had earthday.org, the same thing you can say. So we had several civil society prominent globally, and India, they were in favor of that. So organization is speaking, and I spoke with them offline during the dinner and other times as well. And I see that we spoke with them, and that's why we brought them along. And then that left few others, individual people chosen. I do not know their position, but my general assessment offline talking, that no one really came forward and said, no, this is not the right thing to do. We were very cautious in framing the problem. We were not saying that we are doing SRM or we are doing SAI. We are saying, hey, guys, this is the problem. We know that it's mitigation, adaptation, sequestration. All those things are very important. I must go and accelerate. But that leaves a gap in the near term, managing the near term risk. How do we do that? It's a rational approach. And here are a few techniques that we have to solve this problem or manage that risk. That's how we framed it. And I did not see, if we did, say, SRM or SAI directly went to that conference, I might have a lot of different, opinions that came out from it. But the framing was very different.
Okay.
Did it answer your question, Robert?
Yeah. Let's move on to John Dixon. John, you're on mute. John is on mute. Yeah. Okay, John's got a problem. Let's move on to Gregory. Greg?
Yeah, thanks. Well, unfortunately, I was 20 minutes late, so I missed probably the bulk of what Soumitra said, and others. But I mean, I assume. Well, I can listen to the recording, but
yeah.
The thing that what I'm interested in is hearing about a meeting that in which the people involved seem have a sense of urgency to them, which I never made. They all seem to be having a wonderful time in some exotic location. They make friends, probably make lovers, have good food, everything like that, and then they all wander off. But there's I don't get the sense of desperate urgency or even modest urgency. It's very organized, it's very civil, very everything. And that was true. I think Dennis even said that about the South Africa meeting, that it was noteworthy for the lack of urgency, and that is the typical thing. And I just wonder if Soumitra can comment on, is there a growing sense of we've got to do something?
Yes.
That's my basic question. I want to see that trend in meetings.
Yeah. Soumitra?
So that's a very good question, Greg, that the sense of urgency, um, it is hard to judge among the people that they were there are not the right representative of the national population. So I think a lot of people expressed urgency. And given that, a lot of people, including very high profile people, came just and told me personally that this is the right time that we should be doing such things. But still, I think I would say my opinion, and this is personal opinion without, I have not done any survey or anything. My general assessment that no, we do not have that sense of urgency that is needed to address the problem. I think that is something we are trying to generate, that sense of urgency. I
Yeah.
do not think we do have that. That's my general feeling. But
Okay.
among some of the people within the conference, I
Yeah.
think they do have, and that they could be our allies.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, John, and then we'll move on to Soumitra's action plan. John?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good, excellent. Yeah, look, terrific job, Soumitra, Dennis, and gang. I think that's a conversation that needs to be, you've initiated so well after all those local level meetings leading up to the summit in Delhi. And that was, a year's work, wasn't it, from HCI and Soumitra. So that has to be recognized, that every meeting has what goes before and what follows after. And that what follows after, I think you'll come to later on, Soumitra. I wanted to come back. It's a terrific framing. And you mentioned monsoon and agriculture as one set of discussion, and local albedo management as another set in relation to glacier, snow melt, etc. And what strikes me is that there was a recent Nature India article that points to the particular distribution of heat wave deaths within India, and they're primarily northern, but it makes the point that 2/3 of the deaths are in 5 states, but then those 5 states don't have power because they only contribute 1/3 of the economy. So 2/3 of the states are hardest hit, and they're the poorest people. Now, we know even within the states that's totally true too, that there's with heat waves or with the agriculture and monsoon effects that's there. I was hoping that you might be linking up the glacier melt, snow melt, and the elements related to agriculture within the Indo-Gangetic Plain, because that's one of the food bowls of the world, but it's also the food bowl of India. And it's not only a matter of the monsoon, which also brings the snow feed and glacier feed for the rivers, but it's also the underground water, the aquifers, which are in absolutely terrible state. And so that whole question of the glacier come snow melt relates as directly to agriculture and food and civil stability as does the monsoon question. So I wonder, I sense there's a political economy at a national level, and there's a political economy at a regional level. That means Bangladesh and Pakistan and Nepal and Bhutan, etc. So maybe you'll come to those in the next segment, particularly about, Soumitra, how local is the local albedo management, and how quickly might that have an effect on the glacier and snow melt and the feeding of the aquifers in northern India.
Thank you, John. Well, I think that's a good segue to going back to you, Soumitra, to wind up your remarks on the future actions, which are well underway. Soumitra?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, those are good. That is good question, John. And there are a lot of elements are there, and we try to address just to respond to your question in different panels, but also in our recommendation. But ultimately, a focus is that near-term risk management and in the SRM related, and how that can help in terms of cooling the temperature as well as the melting glaciers. So coming back to the next steps. So what we have done or promoted this summit is not a one-off event. It's a launch pad for taking action. So the initial part was that we'll have a conversation, including the distinguished people involved in climate change, and then we'll follow up with action. So there are two parts. I mean, there are a lot of recommendations that came out, but the way I can separate this part at the moment is that one is the coalition building. That is, and when I say coalition building, basically what I mean by creating working groups on different areas of SRM. And other is that advocacy piece. Those are the two parts involved here, the policy piece and the research piece, and basic evidence generation, and then feeding that evidence to making the policies. So these are the two parts. So the first part on the working group. So we already have started a national working group with IIT, Indian Institute of Technology, and IITM, which is Ministry of Arts Sciences Institute, IITM. They do Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology. So that's probably the IITM in Pune. They have a very good budget, about 100 scientists to work in that institute. And the idea is that develop capacity and all as in MCB research area and among Indian scientists. So across India, we want to develop a group of scientists working on this, and HCI will be providing the administration, the proposal for funding, and all those that is needed, and working with the government for the policy making. So these are the things, it's ongoing. We already have several meetings with IITM and IIT Delhi. In fact, one of them was in IIT Delhi right after 5th August. We had the meeting in IIT Delhi, and in which Dennis participated in that meeting as well. So this is one thing is that going on, that how to develop MCB research. And Brian is working, it will be the lead for this group, but it will be Indian-led, Indian scientist-led, ultimately, Indian institution and Indian scientist-led working group for MCB. So that's one thing we are doing. We already are doing it. The second part is that Himalayan Glacier Research Group, and that will expand into water security. So Himalayan, not only glacier, but also water security. And that will be led by an Indian scientist, Farooq Azam. We have been working with Farooq Azam for the last several years on this topic. So we already have a working group, but we'll expand the agenda and the scope as well as the more Indian institutions. In the past, it was 3 organizations leading that working group. One was Bright Ice Initiative, that Leslie Field, and HCI, and Indian Institute of Technology, Indore. And now we want to expand that to more Indian institutions. So those are the two working groups we are launching. SAI, we are not looking into that at the moment because David Keith and group, they are already engaged with the government of India on this topic, and I don't want to initiate another, working group until we know what they are doing. And if they do have a plan of taking this forward, and that is satisfying, good and fine. Don't want to spend too much time or resources on the same thing. So this is the working group part. The second part, engaging the policymakers. And this is that, so the idea is that you need to create a network of champions who would be, advocating for the national policy or climate policy 2.0. That's what. Now, at this time, we have former secretaries, former generals, and former bureaucrats. We are targeting those people. I mean, they were present and they expressed interest, and we are looking into that, started already engaging them and how they can be helpful. Basically, continue the discussion and how to bring them into helping us in this climate policy 2.0. So that's the second two parts that we are doing. It's very early stage, as you can imagine, and we do not have yet funding to do that. But I'm expecting that there will be funding to cover this work taking forward.
Very good, Soumitra. So I would emphasize that Soumitra is setting up a series of working groups to focus on the action points within each of these domains that he described. And we are now beginning to plan for a national, actually international conference hosted in India next year, which would be a much bigger affair. And that will, vastly expand the awareness and concern about this issue. And in the meantime, we continue pursuing each of the recommendations and an action plan for each one. And I would emphasize that for me personally, one of the most important outcomes of this cooling event was the emphasis that it has focused on India's potential engagement in the development of a first movers coalition of climate vulnerable countries. Actually, I had the opportunity to lead a breakout group during the summit that focused attention on India's potential leadership in launching this coalition and helping to bring together a number of climate vulnerable countries from the South to get the dialogue underway. And I was quite pleasantly surprised at how supportive the entire working group was to this idea. So these are a few of the key action points, and you'll be hearing much more about them as we move forward on this whole agenda. We've got three hands up now. Jonathan, followed by Ron, followed by Robbie. Jonathan?
Thank you. You've probably heard the phrase that you cannot manage what you cannot measure. And another version would be you cannot change what you cannot measure. So it would seem urgent to get a national policy of counting heat death rather than using it as a looking back over a period and trying to calculate the excess deaths by all causes during a period. So do you think there's a hope that the heat death can become a countable statistic?
I think that awareness exists, and there has been, effort to do that. It is a difficult scenario if you think about, not that there is a lack of intention, that you have 1.4 billion population and a large portion of that population live in the rural areas where the medical situation, the doctors, availability of doctors are, not sophisticated. That's the word I want to use. Not that that's a level of sophistication is not there in many parts of. Doctors are not trained, and I have a doctor friend who is raising this issue, was part of this topic as well. It's the question of people do not identify, the doctors cannot identify, they are not well trained. And there is a question of raising awareness among the doctors themselves to identify that the death is, or even the protection, what level, type of protection, what type of treatment that they should be. It is coming from the heat, not just, the stroke the person has or high blood pressure the person is experiencing. It's not just because of that person has the chronic high blood pressure, it is because of the heat and does need different levels of treatment. Is that awareness of training is not there. And there is a question right these days is that universities should, or the medical colleges should include topics of how to manage the extreme heat patients. So in other words, it's a difficult scenario. I understand that, but that awareness exists among the doctors. How long this is going to take, no idea.
Thank you.
Well, there is one other way to do it. If we can't solve the problem of the identification of the cause of death, maybe you could get the government to attribute the excess death during a heat wave to the heat directly, instead of leaving it as the mysterious excess death total.
Mm-hmm.
That is possible. Yes, that is a possibility that you can do.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's what the researchers are working on these days because of all these complications. Measuring excess deaths is the more straightforward way of dealing with the problem in the immediate future. Okay, Ron, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, Soumitra and Dennis. It sounds like it was a really outstanding effort, and it's undoubtedly going to be helpful in at least raising awareness and hopefully action on this in India. One question I have is I keep harping on this. I know I'm kind of like a broken record, but there is this shovel-ready thing that any country could do really easily, just tell their IMO rep to consider trying to do something about their termination shock. And, we've had the chief scientists of that committee where this would have to be submitted encourage us to do this. So I've been talking with some people in Iceland about this, where I'm going to that conference and we'll raise the same issue. If we have estimated that could be up to 0.2 C. I mean, it's not going to solve the climate problem, but it could actually reduce global warming, significantly. And it just seems, in addition to all the other things that we need to do to prep up and test and develop more substantial means to deal with these problems. I don't understand why we can't just do the kind of easiest thing right now. I mean, it would be a temporary thing because obviously we want to get off fossil fuels. I'm trying to tell the Iceland people that, and it has to do with attribution too, because so you save 50,000 deaths more or less by the IMO regulations, but I'm almost certain that 2.2 C of warming is causing more than 50,000 deaths worldwide. When you think of there's an attribution thing, I think it was carbon, I forget that group, but they like 75% of all these extreme events were exacerbated by warming. And I mean, it's got to be more than tens of thousands of people that have been the premature deaths and due to these climate catastrophes that are
Ron,
yeah.
what
So
you
that's
do
my
is,
point. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a very important and obviously a good opportunity. Why don't you and Soumitra communicate on this bilaterally? Because now that we're developing all of these connections in the Indian government, there's no reason why he could not initiate conversations that could lead to India proposing this regulation change in the IMO. And I'll
Yeah.
be very happy to work with you guys in putting that forward. So why not just send Soumitra another copy of the IMO
And
stuff?
actually,
Yeah.
sorry, Dennis, but
and-
if we could get the Australians on board because it relates directly to the Great Barrier Reef, we could get Iceland on board because it relates, to the AMOC risk. I mean, all these things are connected. So and I'm thinking that if a country like India got behind this, then all these that would be a huge, but the other countries, they might feel a little bit of cover if Iceland or Australia also, it would just somebody's got to just understand. It's kind of like the cooling we're talking about. It's the short, we need a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
anyway.
I have a weekly conversation with Soumitra, and we'll put that on the agenda to get India and the right persons in India to foster this proposal to the IMO.
Yeah, and if
So,
you want
Robbie?
to send an email or something, I'll send something out, whatever.
Yeah, let's email and get that going. Robbie?
Two things to raise. Firstly, congratulations, Soumitra and Dennis, on a really important step forward. I think having any country host a national conversation of this type sets a really important platform for future progress, and so excellent work. However, it reflects the extremely repressive culture that we exist in and the lowest common denominator of recommendations, because really, if we cared about climate change, if we were not indifferent and complacent, we would be saying we must deploy SAI as soon as possible, because the longer we wait for deployment, the worse the impacts will be. And I think that that's a really objective piece of science. And so there's a weakness in the communique from the India Cooling Summit. It reflects what is politically possible at the moment, but the weakness of that political dialogue, the lowest common denominator consensus that says, oh, we just need to talk about it and we don't actually need to do it. We actually do need to do it, and we actually do need to find the constituencies who support the advocacy to do it. And so that's why I'm so interested in the conversation with the private sector about exploring their advocacy to raise the public awareness about the need for cooling. And I'll just invite your comment on that, and then I'll come back for a second question.
So you're right. So you have to think about that. This is the first time you're holding a national conference, and we do not know what level of readiness to have. We do not want something. My general, going back, I do hold a philosophy, working in the US government, not Indian government. And I have made some radical proposals, and sometimes I have been successful in my own domain in the US government. The trick is here, I thought, and working in that capacity, is that you have to bring them along the leadership, because me as a techno-bureaucrat is not in power. We have the power is the policymakers. So you need to hold them along. Often they are not aware of what is possible. And if you bring very radical ideas, you will be thrown off. And I have seen that happen many times. And so you need to start with them, hold them along, and then bring them along to the point you want to go. So it's a slow process, but I don't want to take the risk of introducing something radical, getting thrown off the track. Rather want to stay in the track, bring them along, even though it could be slow.
Yeah. So if the conference can lead to a conversation about establishing a coalition of first mover states of vulnerable nations, then that can lead to an informal conversation about the urgency of deployment, even while the public conversation is more conservative.
That's true, Robert. And what I have learned in this and other experiences is that the very first thing and the most critical thing you've got to get across is the actual science of the urgency of the acceleration of global heating. There is so little awareness that the global heating is actually accelerating, that we have a great barrier to overcome the reticence that people have. We're talking decades away in most people's minds from the need to deal with the problem. So the first thing we need to establish, and I think the summit did a pretty good job, was the absolute urgency that now is when we've got to deal with this problem in India and elsewhere. And once people have that in their heads, they come around. There's just, it's just so logical when people know how urgent it is that SRM solutions are very, very important. So that's the process that we're on right now. And as Soumitra mentioned, we're in the early stages of that. But things can move rapidly now. And over the next year or two, a lot of progress can be made in
Exactly.
India.
Yeah. So thanks very much. Now, the second point that I wanted to make is that the town hall was advertised as an opportunity for HPAC members to discuss a range of issues. And so I would like to ask the steering council for an update on the response to Herb Simmons.
Okay. We'll get to that then as our next issue. Let's see how much time we have. Yeah, we've got about half an hour left. Let's take Greg Slater quickly as our last on this topic, and then we'll close and move on to Robert and others as well. Greg?
Thanks. So first of all, let me also thank both Dennis and Soumitra for the amount of work that's involved. I think I have some sense that it's a huge amount of work that you spent, and I'm grateful for that. But the question has just been discussed in responding to Robert Tulip is that there is this tension between meeting people where they are and kicking their butts. And to me, the overwhelming consensus within the advocates for cooling has been, meeting them where they are. And there's no mathematical or physical answer to where that sweet spot is. So it's everybody's own perception of human nature. But and there's this whole fear of, if we do something too fast, everybody will reject it and it'll take another 50 years. But that in itself, that sort of reticent to be aggressive has its own potential cost. And you just look at how long things have taken. So I would just say that do experiments in being aggressive. You can always back out. And I really, because unfortunately, climate catastrophe is on our side. Time is on our side to the extent that we can engage in vigorous advocacy. Well, it's not on our side when it comes to actually preventing catastrophe because of, eventually. But in any case, all of our efforts will eventually, I'm confident that all of our efforts will eventually be overtaken by the facts on the ground, if we can't do it nature will convince the politicians, because they will receive the kick in the butt from their people who demand something to be done eventually. But it's a matter of, so you're balancing these forces, and I think one should consider being more aggressive, although I'm sure you do a lot of advocacy. Anyway, I'll shut up.
So let me respond to this question. Consider this, that this is the first time we are bringing the discussion. We did not, say that deployment, or this is the introduction that you have to have. You need to bring them along. What there? We are not saying that it is deployment or not deployment at this time. We are introducing the topic, begin the national conversation. That is the first time. And I think we are probably the most aggressive, balanced, however, but I do not see that anywhere this kind of open conversation, engagement on this topic, that we need to have this topic. And able to generate consensus is an important thing. Once you do it, then logical process that how to bring along. That's the logical process you want to bring in. But before you do, without introducing the topic, so this is the preamble that it's the launch pad that we have started, and how this will take. Dealing with people is not, and multiple people is not an easy thing. It's a difficult thing to manage.
That's right. That's right. No, I think, Greg, the role of the fire eaters like yourself is very important. And as an organization, HPAC is moving in that direction. And we're now designing an online conference that's going to really hit this issue hard. But when it comes to national politics and national communities like India, like the Philippines, etc., one has to have a pretty sophisticated understanding of where the dialogue is, or else you completely kill your efforts to actually make a change in the political environment. And that's what Soumitra was alluding to. You've got to be aware of where people are, or they will cut you off at the knees politically, and you're dead. You have no influence. I think the way Soumitra has done it and the way we're proceeding is actually the only way that we can actually assume that India could be a major player in this area. But of course, it's a matter for debate. Just how you position yourself on the scale. But we'll be working on that very, very carefully. But
I understand.
Yeah, exactly. So continue to breathe fire, man, because your role and our role is very critical in that area. Okay, well, let's close on that and thank Soumitra for getting up at 3 a.m. It was a beautiful set of recommendations. I think very appropriate for where we are, and I look forward to myself, the other members of the organizing committee from HPAC, and perhaps members of this group to get involved. John Dixon has a whole lot of experience in India, perhaps Robbie and others have as well, and we can begin to support your efforts more and more vigorously. So we're just at the very beginning of a major, major opportunity. Thanks again, Soumitra. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll drop off. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity.
Go to get some sleep.
Teacher, where's your hat?
I have the hat. I came back from the US. I threw a lot of things as I moved to India, but I kept that hat though.
Okay,
all right.
Thanks so much, Soumitra.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, indeed. I would make a point that the steering circle has recently invited Soumitra to join us as a member of the steering circle as we begin to expand and diversify the steering circle a little bit, and he has agreed to do so. And so
on that
you can
note, I
see
should
how valuable that will be.
Dennis,
Ron.
we should also mention that David Spratt has recently joined the steering circle.
Exactly. And David
So,
Spratt has also agreed to
two
join.
excellent new
Yeah.
folks. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're very open to other suggestions, particularly from the Global South, and more women as members of the steering circle. Currently, Rebecca Bishop is our only woman member of the steering circle since we lost Suzanne Reed some time ago. Okay, we're just about 10 minutes from the end of the program, but what we perhaps could do in that period is to collect a couple more ideas from members on topics that they would like to discuss, bring up, or have a program that would deal with that topic. And perhaps some of you may have been thinking of one or two that you could contribute. Oh, good. We have two hands up. Let's see what Greg and then Robbie has to say.
Well, one possible topic, and it's been talked about before, but it probably needs another treatment, is cooling the Arctic, because there was this paper that Sev brought up, and I skimmed it and studied a little bit. But the question of whether, I mean, this paper actually alleged that it might actually be the opposite sign, not just inefficient, but the opposite sign. Now, in my brief reading of the literature, which goes back to at least 2008, when what's his name wrote a paper on this. So it's a long literature. Is that it reduces the efficiency, and you may need more stuff, and you may have to be more careful of when you do it seasonally, all that stuff. But it is certainly not the case that it's worse than useless. And so I if someone is up to going through the literature a bit and presenting sort of the current state of the capability of Arctic cooling and the limits to it, et cetera, since there's a lot of emphasis by people, and that's the first step. It would be I'd be interested in hearing that. I'm not sure I'm up to doing it, but yeah.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. And I think in our meeting next Monday in the steering circle, where we talk about future programs, I will ensure we bring that up, Greg, because I think that would be just a superb topic for an expert to, or a couple of experts to talk with us about. At this point, a lot is happening in that domain, and as you may know, there's going to be a couple of big conferences in Iceland and the Nordic countries that are going to be dealing with that issue, among others, because it's so important to them later in the year. So we'll do that. Robbie?
So I'd like to report that my progress on my book, Sunlight Reflection, A Business Leader's Guide to Cooling the Earth, is close to publication. So I do expect to publish it this year. And so I would welcome the opportunity to engage with HPAC. And I've really appreciated the support and engagement from HPAC as an organisation and individual members for the conversations raised by the book. So the current status is that it was due back from my editor today, and so then I will respond to the editor's comments over the next week, and then I hope to have a version that's suitable to circulate to HPAC members, and then hopefully present at an HPAC forum later in the year if possible.
That would be fantastic, Robbie. Just just let us know when you find that it's the right time to have one, and I think that would be an excellent HPAC members forum session to look at the book. And I'm sure we're all looking forward to those great images, the AI generated images that you're coming up with. Some of them are brilliant, and that'll be a big feature of the book. Brew.
Yeah. Well, I've just launched another website, empathy-economics.com, and I just want to draw your attention to that. I'd love people to take a look and give me some feedback. We've also completed the 10 modules of the Biosphere Restoration Plan. I've circulated the introductory module, module 1, to a lot of people. I don't know who's received it yet, but looking forward for feedback and happy to share other modules with people who are interested. It's about 185 pages, the total works. I'm going to be in Geneva at the end of September at Bob Bishop's biannual workshop, when we will be looking at whole earth system modeling and whole earth system accounting and potential coalition on that work. And then I will be in Iceland at the Global Risks and Stabilization Summit, where I shall certainly be pushing Sev Clarke's work on ice making and his proposals there, amongst other things. So that's just an update on our end. And
Fantastic, Bruce. Brew, would you be perhaps interested to have a HPAC session on the topic?
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. Very happy to
because
give you a presentation.
we haven't put enough emphasis on ecosystem restoration as part of the overall agenda. So with that, we'll take that to the scheduling for later in the year, perhaps in October, November.
Yep, no, I'd be delighted, and happy to share some information with people ahead of the game.
Fantastic.
So, but empathy economics, I think you'll find it interesting. Perhaps on the subject we were talking about in terms of grouping some people, I'm always conscious when I come onto these things that we're a bunch of old men, and we're culpable. We've failed. We really need to bring the young into this, and get out there and get some real energy. I've just recruited a girl called Phoebe, who's pretty good on TikTok and fairly radical. And so we're going to be doing a whole load of shorts, and I'm trying to feed information into that end of it.
Very good. Do you think Phoebe, with your guidance, might be able to inject some more vigor into our publicity on these issues?
I'd love to try and make that happen. It's early days. I've got a meeting with her tomorrow, and we're going to start trying to produce some shorts for TikTok and Facebook and others. So I will circulate the the outcomes.
Yes.
Who's on TikTok here?
I am.
Well, I mean, I have an account on every one of these things. Most of them I never touch, but for one reason or another, I've collected accounts on everything.
Yeah. Well, look, Brew,
it's breaking out of our silos is what we've got to do.
And
it's silos everywhere, and you have to go and look at things that you really find distasteful, but then you create an opportunity to put messages out. We all know a lot about it, but every time I go to a dinner party or I meet with a bunch of friends and I sit back and listen to them start talking about climate or weather or what's going on, the most of the world have got no idea of the danger we're in or what's coming, and certainly no idea of the timeline.
It's true.
Or of the capability to change it. Because we've got so much opportunity, to build a decent planet for 9 billion people.
Well, this is great, Brew. I will get back to you on this because we are looking to reinvigorate our media and comms efforts, which have lagged lately. And I think our online conference, the potential for a global campaign on Cool It Now, and our collaboration with a couple of other organizations that may work with us on this is going to help us to really take advantage of the El Nino as a big boost to this. So I'll get back to you because your colleague may be quite critical in helping us to do a lot of publicity that we plan to do over the next couple months.
Yep, absolutely. No,
Great.
delighted
Great.
to.
Yeah.
With that, I'm going to pack up because it's 12 o'clock my time and it's high time.
Okay. Very good. And it is exactly
thanks, everybody.
1.5 hours. And so I think that unless there's any other urgent, we'll just call it quits for today. Yeah. No, I don't see any other hands up. So thank you all for joining us. Great discussion. See you in a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.